everyone, and welcome to Burn Bright, Not Out, Achieving Sustainable Success in Your Law Practice. I'm Michelle Almeidi, Health and Wellness Committee Chair of BHBA's Barristers Young Attorney section, as well as the Real Property section member. I'm delighted to introduce today's speakers, Sarah-Nell Walsh and Karen Morris. Sarah-Nell Walsh is the founder of Wayfinders LLC and an executive coach who works with equity partners and high-performing professionals to overcome burnout and lead with clarity and confidence. A former litigation partner, she was honored as Mentor of the Year and recognized as a rising star by Georgia Super Lawyers and among the legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine. Certified by the Hudson Institute and the International Coaching Federation, she uses evidence-based methods to help clients develop psychological flexibility and achieve sustainable success. Thank you, Sarah-Nell. Karen Morris is the president and founder of Suzo Morris Group, LLC, where she provides executive leadership, career, and transition coaching with a focus on whole person development. A former senior executive with over 30 years of corporate experience, Karen helps individuals and organizations gain clarity, resilience, and purpose. An associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation and Hudson Institute graduate, she also brings advanced training in the neuroscience of change and internal family systems to her practice, and is a committed advocate for diversity and inclusion, having served as president of the National Association of Women Lawyers. And now, without further ado, let's get started.
All right, Suzanne, if you could put the slides up. Awesome. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Michelle, and for the invitation to be here. We are so happy to be with you guys today. I am here from Atlanta, Georgia, but Karen is joining from just down the street. Where'd you say you live, Karen?
I'm in Burbank.
She's in Burbank. So she's a local. But I coach clients across the country and actually have several clients out in the LA area. So Suzanne, can you go to the first slide, please? Great. So I'm not going to read the slides today, but they are going to be up there for your benefit. When we talk about success in the legal profession, the conversation often revolves around billable hours, title, when are you making partner? Have you made partner yet? Are you up for equity? Revenue benchmarks, how big is your book of business? Have you hit $1 million in business yet? Or client wins, right? Did you see that big case that I just got, that big verdict? That big settlement. But none of that really matters if you're depleted, disconnected, or burned out. And so when we talk about sustainable success, that's your ability to show up consistently at a high level over time without sacrificing your health, your values, or your relationships. And so when I think about sustainable success, I really think about three different areas. I think about time. Do I have time to do the things that I want to do outside of work? I think about energy. If I have the time to do the things I want to do outside of work, do I have the energy to do them? Or am I routinely skipping things because, yes, I'm off work at 6 o'clock, but I don't have energy to go to the gym or play on my tennis team? And then 3, do I have space in my schedule for it? And then I think about 3 categories of things. I think about work. I think about people, right? Do I have the time, energy, and space for work that's important to me, for people that are important to me, and for activities that are important to me? And in the energy piece, there's really an element of like, can I show up for these things the way that I want to? Because I remember when I was practicing law, sometimes I would show up to that tennis practice at 6:30 after a full day of work. And yet I hadn't quite taken my litigator hat off yet. I showed up a little snappy, I showed up a little feisty, and maybe not the way that I wanted to for my friends. So all of this is a part of creating sustainable success. Karen, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm taking notes, Sarah-Nell. As always, every time we have these conversations, I learn a lot. But I would say continue. All good
Okay,
points.
great. On to the next slide, please. So when I think about sustainable success, I think about 5 key ingredients. And the first is clarity. And so when I think about clarity, are you clear on your values, right? What's really important to you, what's driving you, the what is guiding you in your life and your choices? And are you clear on your priorities, how you want to stack things? And this is not just overall, but this is on any given day. And so I often will say to my clients, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, right? And what that means is, are we clear about it? Because when you are clear, when your values are clear, when your priorities are clear, something should be a hell yes. And if it isn't, then to me, we don't have that much time. So the answer then, if it's not a hell yes, is it's a hell no. And I tell the story that my kids, I would be like, do you want me to, come and volunteer at this field trip for you? My kids would be like, Mom, no, God, no, you're too busy for that, right? Because they knew my values and they knew my priorities. And while they know I will always show up for them when something is important to them, and I've never missed anything, that field trip wasn't important to them. And so they know I'm too busy to just show up to a random field trip that is not of high value and high importance to them. And so, when I was practicing law, I had a coach and she was a bit of a spitfire. And I was talking about how important my family was to me. Oh, my family, they're so important. They're so important. And she said to me, if your family is so important to you, where are they on your calendar? And it was like a gut punch, right? Because I was traveling every other week for work. I was handling hundreds of cases. I was managing 70 lawyers. And I didn't have any guarded time for my family on my calendar. And after that, going forward, every Thursday, I picked my son up at the bus. That was a non-negotiable, and I took him to swimming lessons. And that was my way of getting my family on the calendar. And I ate dinner with my family that afternoon. And so when you're thinking about your priorities, right, how are you protecting space for the things that you say are important to you? This gets us right into boundaries, right? And lawyers hate the word boundaries. When I work with lawyers, this is where I get the biggest pushback because we have, as a profession, defined excellence as being available 24/7 to our clients. And so when you talk about boundaries with lawyers, they say, I can't do that, right? And so how I want you to think about boundaries is, when do you work? What is a typical workday for you, right? What are your hours of operation? Just like the store has hours that they're open, what are your hours? Who do you serve? Who are you best situated to serve? Who are the clients that you are uniquely situated to serve? You are not for everyone, nor should you be, nor should your services be, right? And so who do you serve? And then how and when do you communicate? And those are the foundations of boundaries, right? You don't have to call them that, but those are the foundations. And when I talk to my lawyer clients about it, I say, let's follow the 80-20 rule, right? You work from 8:30 to 5:30 or 8:30 to 6:30 or 7:30 to 7:30. I don't care what the hours are if they work for you, but you work this period of time 80% of the time. And 20% of the time, we're going to acknowledge that your work is going to spill over outside that time frame. And that's okay. That's the nature of the beast, right? And if it's happening more than that and more than you want it to, then what do we have to shift so that we can right size the container, right size the work so it fits inside the container? The third thing is rest. And again, so many lawyers I know never take a breath, but this really comes at the sacrifice of the quality of work that you can do for your clients. And the way that I always frame it with my equity partners is, you will do higher quality work. You will be a better lawyer if you are well rested. And there is so much data to support that statement. Okay? This is not me talking with a wellness hat on. This is science. And so really getting rest, that is your fuel for your practice. And so making sure that you are getting enough rest is imperative. And the way that we start demonizing, I'll use the word rest, happens really early on. And I've got a story from this weekend. This weekend, I was driving back from the gym with my son. He's 16. And my son was like, God, Mom, I'm so tired. I guess I should have taken my Adderall this morning because he's ADHD. He said, William, the answer to I'm tired is not stimulants. The answer to I'm tired is rest. Your body is telling you that you are tired and you should go home and take a nap. The answer isn't tomorrow I'm going to take my Adderall so I'm not tired in the middle of the day. And his mind was blown, because that is how we are talking about rest as early as the early teenage years. Is if you are tired, take something to fix it, right? Not if you are tired, your body needs to sleep. And so I want you to hear that message, and also to think about the example that we're setting for our kids, because that's the example I've set for him. I'm tired, I get a cappuccino, right? Oh man, I'm so tired, I need a pick-me-up. That's the example I'm setting. And so how do we set a different example for our kids? Support. Practicing law is a team sport, y'all, both at work and at home. There is a reason why so many of us choose to practice in firms. And that's because many hands make light work. And so being at a firm, that should actually enable you to go on vacation, right? That should actually enable you to have someone help you with your workload. And at home, we need a team just as strong. So, when I was practicing law, I had a housekeeper, I had a nanny, and I had a personal assistant. And that was my home team, in addition to the team that I had at work, which I had a lot of associates, a paralegal, and a secretary, right? And everyone enabled me. Every person on that team enabled me to manage my caseload and to serve my clients. And they were all important to my success. Whenever someone says to a person, how do you do it? How do you do it all? How do you manage it all? The answer you'll often hear, if they're not a narcissist, is with a lot of help or with a really strong team, right? And there's a reason for that. And then the final key ingredient of success is resilience. And that is because life is hard. No matter how good you are at your job, no matter how strong of a person you are, there are times that life is going to bring you to your knees, that you're going to lose a big case, that you're going to have a client that badmouths you on TV, that you're going to get that 1-star Google review, right? That you're going to miss your kid's recital, that your parent is going to die and you're not going to be there. These things happen. This is what it means to be human. We don't get out of it without a lot of setbacks. And so practicing resiliency is so important so that we can bounce back, right? So that our practice can have longevity. And really the keys that I see to resilience with my clients are self-compassion, being compassionate to ourselves, treating ourselves with the same compassion we treat other people, setting realistic expectations. So many of my lawyer clients are time optimists. They think they can get 20 hours worth of work done in 5 hours of time. And it's just not possible, right? So setting realistic expectations for yourself and really being willing to pause when something's not working and reevaluate your options for moving forward. Be creative. We're ready for the next slide. So when I first start working with some of my clients, and I told Karen this story early on, I recently had a client and he's an equity partner and he was on track to bill 3,000 hours this year when we started working together. I mean, just crazy, crazy, crazy workload. And when I talked to him about what we were going to be up to over the course of our coaching engagement, kind of this idea of a sustainable practice, he kind of laughed at me and was like, "Oh, that's cute. You think you can help me with that? Like, I'm really smart and I haven't been able to figure it out. But like, cool, if my firm will pay for it, I'm game to try with you, Sarah-Nell, right?" But his idea was really, this might be possible for other people, but this is not possible for me. And I think part of why he said that was because he didn't even know what a sustainable practice look like. He had never seen it modeled by anyone in his firm. And so he didn't have the words or the language. And if you can't imagine it, you can't do it. Right? Like, that's why examples are so powerful, because if we can see it, we can achieve it. Well, sometimes we haven't seen it yet, but if we have the language for it, it makes it more possible. And so that's what I've done here on this slide, is talk about what does a sustainable practice look like. And you guys can read this yourselves, so I'm not going to go through each one of these. But when I talk to my clients, I talk about ruthlessly single tasking. So many of us are under the myth that we can multitask, and that is just not possible according to brain science. They actually call it rapid task switching, I think now, which means that, and you lose time every time you switch a task. And so no one is inherently good at multitasking. And there's some really interesting studies out of the University of London that multitasking reduces your cognitive ability. That means actually makes you dumber to the same extent as losing a night of sleep and smoking marijuana. So if you would not serve your clients while smoking marijuana, then you should not be thinking it's great client service to be multitasking and serving your clients, right? And yet we all do it all the time. So no judgment, but you can do better work in less time if you can ruthlessly single task, do one thing at a time and finish it before you go on to the next task. The second thing is, what can you delegate and what can you outsource? And the real difference between these two things is that when you delegate, you still take responsibility for the finished product. This is where you give work to an associate, they write a brief, they hand it back to you, you edit it, you send it to the client, right? It's still done under your brand. When you outsource, it is done under someone else's brand, so it does not reflect back on you. So you are asking them to do the entirety of the task and then to deliver a finished product to someone else. So really thinking about, does this task need to be done by me? Does it require my unique skill set? Or can someone else do it and I can review it? Or can someone else do it in its entirety, like clean my house, and I don't need to do it at all? And really thinking, being ruthless about what you can delegate and what you can outsource, especially if you have very highly valuable time. The more you're charging for your time, the less you should be doing. And then also managing your energy. We talk so much about time, but so much less about energy. And we have a finite amount of energy every day. And some days we drain our batteries before the day has run out. And so really thinking about what of your tasks needs your highest energy, what needs your best energy, what is your highest value work today, and matching it with the highest time when you have your most energy. So for me, that's in the morning. So I do my client work in the morning, right? And then I do my admin tasks late in the afternoon. That's when I do my email. That's when I do my scheduling, because that's lower value, lower energy work. What does a manageable workload look like for you? For each person, the plate, how full they can stuff their plate is different. And so really knowing yourself well and knowing what you can manage. Is it 10 hours a day? Is it 6 hours a day? For me, it was 80 cases. I could manage 80 cases. You gave me 85 cases and I was overstretched. Okay? I could do 200 hours a month like a machine. I could bill 200 hours a month. Do not ask me to bill 204. That was my manageable workload. That is what I could do sustainably, right? So I knew that. But so many people don't know what that is. They just know that whatever they're doing right now isn't working for them, but they don't know what would work for them. And that does require some experimentation. So play with it. See what works for you. Take real time off. Lawyers are known for working through vacation. Now, this does not mean that you have to go radio silent for a 2-week vacation. For most of my clients, that would cause more stress than it would help. If that is what it requires for you to relax, by all means, set up the systems to do that. But if that sounds like it gives you a panic attack, find out what works for you. I have a client, he's going on a 2-week vacation. He's planning to do an hour of email in the morning and an hour of reviewing documents in the afternoon. And we're coming up with ways for him to time bind that to make sure that he doesn't go outside those boundaries, right? But figure out that's what works for him so that he can be present for his family. If he did less work than that, it would really stress him out and he wouldn't be able to be present and enjoy his vacation. So know what taking time off means to you and what is required for you to be able to really relax. Getting outside is so important. You know, you go to the zoo and you watch these tigers like pacing around their cage and you wonder, your heart goes out to them because you're like, these creatures were not made to be kept in captivity. But you know what? Neither were you. And sitting in a room with 4 white walls every day for 10 hours is not how you were designed to be made either. And so getting outside, even if it's just to eat your lunch or to take a call while you walk around the block, is so important for your mental health. To see the sun while it shines during the day, so important for your mental health. And again, 80-20. Hopefully you get to do it 80% of the time. We recognize that 20% of the time it might not be possible. And then the final thing is to really think about your health. You know, we all have lost people too soon. We all have lost people too young. And what is all of this work for if we don't get to enjoy the fruits of the labor? So many people are working for retirement. So many of the lawyer clients I work with say, I can't wait to retire. You know, I have to save this much before I can retire. But if you're sacrificing your health to get there, you might not make it. And then what's it all worth, you know? And so really like getting to the doctor, taking care of your health, doing those preventable appointments, getting screened for sun cancer, treat yourself the way that if you're a parent, the way that you treat your children or the way that your parents treated you, and really prioritizing your health because it is so, so, so important. You are the asset. You're the one who does all the work. And so if you're not around to get it done in your practice, then then all your clients have lost, you know, their very trusted advisor. And so that is what a sustainable practice looks like. I talked fast, Karen, to make sure I got through in my allotted time.
All good, Sarah-Nell. Okay, so you know, I'm sitting here nodding the whole way through Sarah-Nell's what she just went through and taking good notes and reinforcing my understanding of all of these things. So it's really, really sound advice, yet we don't take it. And so part of what can really help us is understanding the science behind why we don't. And then science can also provide us the solutions for getting over those obstacles. So what happens in our human neurobiology as lawyers that creates these obstacles? So it really comes down to the affirmation and reward systems. So affirmation and reward systems are really important. It's really how we learn how to behave and what we come to believe in our lives about ourselves, about the world, and about ourselves and the world. So think about our experience as lawyers. So first of all, just getting into law school, going through college, getting into law school, succeeding in law school, graduating, you know, passing your bar exams, getting a job, being able to be effective and successful in your job, all of that requires a very strong work ethic. And essentially what we do is we continue to reinforce that work ethic. A lot of that is cultural influences. So one of the things that is, and Sarah-Nell pointed this out, we as lawyers can come to believe that it's all up to us individually. There is a certain element of competition that is actually encouraged within the legal culture. It's the reality in our workplaces. And unfortunately, organizations, either intentionally or unintentionally, can often be unsupportive and even toxic. So they're not really supporting us doing all these really good, smart things that Sarah-Nell just shared. So part of some data to help support this, there is a social scientist and coach, Nick Petrie, whose organization has been conducting a lot of really good research and collecting a lot of great data on burnout. And they've interviewed thousands of people internationally in high performing occupations, including lawyers. And one of the areas of commonality among the people they've interviewed is that early in their lives, they picked up beliefs about who they were and how to be that included things like, I will prove my value through my work. So this is something Sarah-Nell and I encounter a lot with our clients, where there's not a belief that they have intrinsic value beyond their identity as a lawyer, as a CEO, as a CFO, as a whatever. It's all about they are valuable because of what they do.
Hey, Karen, I
Sure.
always say you are not your business card.
It's exactly right. And yet our culture encourages that. You meet
100%.
somebody, first thing you ask is, what do you do? So it's something for awareness. I will succeed on my own. Again, this belief in our that we can only rely on ourselves, or that we primarily need to rely on ourselves, versus having that support system that Sarah-Nell talked about. I will endure the stress. I must not show weakness. And this can be particularly, certainly difficult for men culturally. It can also be very, very difficult for women. And when you bring in intersectionality, it's really difficult. This idea that I need to be the best, I need to perform at the top, or I will not be accepted. So there's a lot of elements to that one. And then finally, the idea that they had some role model in their lives, often a parent, that worked nonstop. So, Sarah-Nell talked about the reflection that we give to the people that we mentor, including children, if we have children. We, the last organization that I was part of as an executive, we used to talk about the shadow of the leader. We don't often appreciate the impact that we have on people. We're not thinking about that. And yet we are constantly impacting people. There are people that look to us for behavior, whether we want to be role models or not. So can you go ahead and advance the slide? So, we'll just go ahead and scroll all the way through. But not that important. But let's talk about what doesn't work. And it's, as the slide says, it's taking time off. So here's part of the problem. We will, if we're in burnout, and we'll talk in a minute about the stages of burnout, because it's not one and done. It's not, it's not binary. You're not either in burnout or out of burnout. But once you get into full burnout, more of those advanced stages, taking time off is not going to cure it. What ends up happening is that we'll step away, and we might step away for a long weekend. We might step away for a week. We might step away for 2 weeks. And even if you're able to time bound the way Sarah-Nell was saying, so you're not going to completely step away, you're going to give yourself that opportunity to still remain somewhat tethered. What ends up happening is you come back and you're even putting more pressure on yourself. So you're basically restarting that relentless work ethic, and you find yourself pushing even harder to catch up on what was missed. So instead, what does work is really Sarah-Nell's 5 key ingredients. It's shifting our habits, our beliefs, and our boundaries. So let's dig a little bit more into what burnout is and how different stages of burnout require different solutions. So can you advance
Karen,
this?
can I interject here just for 1 second? So many people think that the answer to burnout is to take a sabbatical, and they change nothing over the course of the sabbatical, and they have a panic attack as they're about to go back to work, right? Because they know they're stepping back into the fire that they left 4 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago when they went on mental health leave. And so this is why, right? This is why taking time off, stepping away. Yeah, it solves it for the 12 weeks you're gone, but you can't pay your mortgage not working at all. And so it's really about how you approach work.
Can you go ahead and advance the slide? And you can go ahead and advance all the way through. So let's talk about the different degrees of burnout. And I'm going to do a little slide reading here just to stress some points. So early stage burnout is, and we'll dig into it a little bit more deeply in a minute, but we often experience early stage burnout as lawyers. So it's a heavy period of stress. You may, at any point during that heavy period of stress, that high level of activity, feel overwhelmed. So you may have moments where you're like, there's a lot. Yet you're continuing to work effectively. And that's kind of the hallmark of that early stage. Then there's more, as you're moving down kind of a continuum, there's mid-level burnout. And mid-level burnout is when essentially you've got early stage burnout that's repeated over and over, where you don't get a break. And you kind of move into this mid-level burnout. And that's where it's really more chronic. You're feeling chronic stress. It's really interesting how it can go along with this feeling of a lot to do, and yet great fatigue can be brought on. The other thing that happens is decreased motivation, and we may think we can power through, we can think our way through that decreased motivation, and yet, and Sarah-Nell talked about this, we're actually not being as effective. So we're basically moving into more of a survival mode. We're just coping.
You see this disengagement is a huge sign. So not just, for you, but for people you manage. If someone normally is like so on it, or if you are normally so on it and you feel very scattered and disengaged, or like work doesn't matter anymore, that's a real signal that you have moved out of early stage and into mid-level burnout.
So then we can go into full burnout, and full burnout is a pretty serious place to be. We can think we can power our way through, but part of what's happening here, it's a neurobiological impact. Our mind, think about what Sarah-Nell was just describing. So think about it as like, you cannot think your way through problems. You start really losing that ability to solution. But your body can also start to shut down. Sarah-Nell talked about, we've all, sadly, in our lives, many of, if not most of us, have experienced where somebody in our lives died before their time or got very, very ill. And this can be a huge cause of it. Simple tasks can become unmanageable, and we can feel very highly emotional, highly triggered. So really unable to control our emotions.
When I see this with my clients, they'll say something like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just can't XYZ like I used to. That's that simple task becoming unmanageable, that I don't know what's wrong with me. This thing that I normally do really, really, really well, my ability to do it has just disappeared and I don't know why, right? And people then get really not compassionate with themselves, really mean to themselves about it. But that's when you're moving into full burnout, when you see that, right? That really extreme analysis paralysis can be a sign of full burnout.
So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. And you can go ahead and click through. So let's talk about curing burnout. So we're going to start with the mid-level to full burnout. So let's talk about stress. So stress has gotten kind of a bad name because there are actually different types of stress. There's kind of good stress and bad stress. So there is a type of stress that is referred to as alert stress. And we all, if you're doing hard things in your life, which we all do, you experience alert stress. Alert stress is what actually helps us perform. It's what helps us problem solve. So, think about, if you're a litigator, think about working on a really, really critical brief before it's filed. Think about preparing for trial and when you're on trial. Think about, in my experience, preparing for a really critical board meeting or a really tough conversation with a regulator. So though in those kind of situations, we can go into alert stress. It's helping us actually perform. And what's happening inside of us is that our sympathetic nervous system is elevated. And that sympathetic nervous system, when that's happening, our stress hormones are working at a moderate level, so not at a high level, but at a moderate level, and they actually help us enhance alertness, increase our energy, sharpen our focus, and improve response times. So this is what helps us do the tough stuff, is alert stress. Then there's maladaptive stress. Now this is when it gets bad. So maladaptive stress happens when we experience too many demands for far too long. Or, and this is something that's really, really common, we continue to ruminate and spiral about the stressful events in our lives. We have the tough we have the tough board meeting. We lose the trial. Sarah-Nell pointed out some, you get the really bad review. Those things that happen to all of us, and we continue to spiral around those. That can cause maladaptive stress. When we're experiencing maladaptive stress, we actually experience changes in our brains that contribute to the emotional responses we talked about a minute ago. We're irritable, we're more easily triggered, we're unmotivated, and we're unable to cope with what life requires of us. We can go on automatic pilot and often default to old habits and what we feel like are wired behaviors. And part of what's happening there is that our brains are really prioritizing getting energy. So that's where a lot of the default behaviors that can be seen as kind of indulgent, but it's actually our neurobiology needs something and it's not getting what it needs. So that's when things like, drinking, alcohol, indulging in less than healthy food, the thing in my mind I go to, because I have done this in my life, is like a pint of Ben and Jerry's to soothe us. We're looking for that. So what do we do if we find ourselves here? Let's go on to the next slide. So the prescription is really that we need to make, and again, Sarah-Nell already pointed to this, we need to really make changes in our lives. So not just changing external things, although that can be important, but also really changing our mindset and our behavior. So part of what we need to do, what we need to accomplish in order to do this is we really need to seek out new perspectives and approaches. And this is where coaching, and depending on where you are in full burnout, it might also require therapy. Coaching can be very, very effective. And both Sarah-Nell and I work with people that find themselves in these stages, and we work with them to co-design solutions that help them get out of it. We also work with them to create an environment where they can do this very deep reflection. So trying to do it on your own can be useful. It really requires a partner. And part of what coaching brings is we have training and tools that can help support that kind of deep reflection. And by deep reflection, it's really, okay, what has happened in my past? What is driving me to these behaviors and beliefs that caused me to burn out? On the future, Sarah-Nell talked about this beautifully, this idea of having a vision for our lives and really being really clear on our priorities and what's most important. And I often, when I'm working with clients, they struggle with what's most important because everything feels important. And it's Sarah-Nell's hell no. It's not what's important. It is what is most important. And I love the tool of look at your calendar. Look at what's on your calendar. What are you prioritizing? What instead do you want to prioritize? So, and then finally, the self-awareness to understand ourselves and the obstacles that we're putting in our own way. So how can I actually move myself toward that vision? And when we're moving now to shifting beliefs and behaviors that are consistent with that vision of really what is most important in our lives, that's where we may consider a change of our job, a different role in the organization we're in, or moving to a different firm or a different company, changing our career, setting new boundaries, creating new boundaries for ourselves. And again, Sarah-Nell, walked through this really well. Boundaries are really, really, really hard, right? Part of what can be helpful, and this is something I learned from one of the coaches that I've worked with as an executive, is starting with what do you value and what do you have a right to in your life? And you can even create, I have a right to statements. So I have a right to be able to attend my child's sporting events. I have a right to, as Sarah-Nell was talking about, a good night's sleep. Really simple things that we have a right to in our lives. And from there, then we can create boundaries and use things like our calendars as tools so that we can preserve those boundaries and also be able to say no to things that are going to not allow us to live within those boundaries. And that's where, again, working with coaches can bring forth new tools and all kinds of support that can help you experiment with what's going to work for you in your life so that you can, as Sarah-Nell said at the very beginning, you can do it on a consistent and sustainable basis.
Yeah, I love that. And one, I want to point out that it's unique for everyone. That this is not the same. The tools that I need are not going to be the tools that Karen needs. And so it's very, very individualized. And even hopefully what you take away from today's presentation will be very individualized. And the second thing I want to say is I encourage all of you to look around and to find a lawyer, one lawyer who has a life that you would want for yourself. It's very hard. I worked in a firm of 700 people and I could not find one whose life I wanted. Right? So look around and see who has this life that I'm trying to emulate. And if you don't see it, can you be that for someone else? Can you be the example then that someone else gets to point to?
Yeah, and if you can't see it, that tells you something.
Yeah.
And it's very, very individual. It's not, and that's why, while we're talking about prescriptions here, the prescriptions are very, very high level because each one of us has our own lives and our own experiences that brought us to where we are today. So it is extremely, extremely unique to each of us, sui generis as lawyers. We can understand that. Let's move on to the next slide. So let's talk about early stage burnout. So in the early stage, again, we're in this experience of alert stress. So we're getting ready for that big thing, or we're in the big thing. Well, what can we do that can keep us from going to from that early stage to more of a mid stage and full stage burnout? So you can go ahead and click. So really here, it's learning to balance what the neuroscientists refer to as performance mode with growth mode. So performance mode, again, is this mode of alert stress. We're getting stuff done. And it's really important that, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We need, though, to balance that with times where we go into growth mode. And to counter growth mode, to compare it to performance mode, growth mode is kind of a stepping back, a sitting back. As I was thinking about this yesterday, one way to think about it is like you finish the trial, you get the verdict, You're sitting then with the team and you're debriefing. So you may be debriefing about what went well and what didn't. Another thing is just gosh, really appreciate you, really appreciate you. You know, this is an insight I got along the way. It's more of an opening up. And it's really about exploration, innovation, creativity, and curiosity. So it's really, again, more of an opening up. The thing about growth mode that can be really difficult for high performing lawyers is that we can actually experience a bit of a dip in our ability to perform. So it's that taking a break, stepping back. We're not necessarily, and we are not certainly an alert stress. So it can feel like it's taking a pause, it's taking a break. So when we're truly taking a break, we're not on it. You know, we're stepping back. And yet here's the key. Allowing ourselves to grow into growth mode actually grows our capabilities for future performance. So Sarah-Nell talked about it. Taking the break, getting the rest, giving ourselves an opportunity to rebound actually improves our effectiveness going forward.
I always tell my clients, look at nature. Like trees aren't in full leaf all year long, right? Like they take a break in the winter and the tide comes in and the tide goes out. Like we see all of these examples. The sun doesn't shine all day. We have nighttime. Like we see all of these examples in nature of balance, and yet we expect something different from ourselves. And that's just not realistic.
So let's go ahead and we can move to the next slide. So what can we do? So let's break this down to some practical steps. And these kind of actions we can take where once you're in mid to full burnout, really engaging with a coach, engaging with a therapist can really be extremely important, if not necessary. Here, these are things we can all do on our own. And what I'm going to really point to here, and again, I'm using words that Sarah-Nell used, is consistency and giving ourselves compassion. So working at doing these things and yet giving ourselves a lot of grace about not being perfect, which is real hard for us as lawyers to do. This is not about perfection. It's not about, oh, I skipped a day and so, yeah, no, that's not working for me anymore. Really aiming for consistency. So what we're trying to do here is just raise our awareness, is really learn to recognize and appreciate that alert stress is useful and we can use it to perform, but then be very intentional about calling on actions that'll regulate ourselves out of the stress mode. So actually being intentional, like, okay, now I need to do A, B, C, and D so that I can get myself out of their performance mode. As we do these things consistently over time, it actually will strengthen our resilience, as Sarah-Nell pointed out, and our ability to experience the more harmful stress as that comes about, oftentimes from external events that happen. So when we're in alert stress, just become aware. Think about what's happening in our bodies. And again, this is something I think definitely in US culture, we don't value the incredible sources of data and the important connection between our brains and our bodies. So begin to pay attention a little bit more to your body. So notice when you're in alert stress, notice the changes in your heart rate. Notice your breathing and how the breathing may differ from when you're in more of a relaxed state. Notice tightness or tension. So for me, one of the things, and this is something I just realized maybe about a year and a half ago, when I'm in that alert stress mode, I tend to kind of set my jaw. This was new to me. I didn't realize I did that. And so it's wonderful data because now I will sometimes just kind of do a little bit of a scan. If I notice that I'm setting my jaw and I don't need to be in alert stress, I'll just relax my jaw, and it can relax my whole body and my brain. It can help me take that pause. So really become more aware of that. And then intentionally create the space to allow you to shift. So it's kind of that debrief moment that I was talking about before. Give yourself, you finish the trial, go home. Like, go home and take the afternoon off and allow yourself to go, or just step outside, as Sarah-Nell was saying. So basically, really appreciate that we can't just be talked out of this. We can't just tell ourselves, stop, because our brains really aren't designed to do that. Our brains are not designed to listen when we're in this heightened sympathetic state. So instead, we need to counterbalance this threat that our brains are perceiving by being in the alert state with our bodies, and using our bodies to communicate to our brains that we're okay. So here's a few simple things, and I'm going to run through this pretty quickly, but some simple things to try. So simple breath work, box breathing. You breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale 4 seconds, you hold it 4 seconds. Do that 4 times. It takes a very little amount of time and can completely regulate your neurobiology, your neurosystem. Immerse yourself in hobbies. Make those on your hell yes list. Things that you really enjoy doing. Even short meditation, a 5-minute guided meditation, or body scan. Exercise, moving your bodies. These are things that Sarah-Nell pointed out. Rest and healthy boundaries. So let's move on to the next slide real quickly.
I'm going to add one thing, which is to really think that, like, your brain can't get you out of the problem your brain got you into, right? And so, and what my clients often will say to me is, I can't work my way out of this, right? Hard work got them in, and they think hard work, if I just work harder, I'll come out the other side. And it's like, no, hard work got you here, and hard work's not going to get you home. And so really, like, don't solve the problem with the same ingredients that got you into the problem.
So well said. And it reminds me a little bit, something that you all may relate to. What makes you a really, really good associate in a law firm is not necessarily going to make you a partner or make you a good partner. What makes you a really, really great staff attorney in a corporate environment is not going to necessarily make you a good leader in that organization. So it's the same kind of thing as learning that we need different skills and different tools to do different things. So here's the key: avoid it entirely. Like, just recognize this idea of alert stress and avoid, and really commit to yourself to avoid burnout. So we need a balance. Think about being able to balance performance mode and growth mode, being able to call on your parasympathetic nervous system to get you out of that heightened sympathetic nervous system state. And here's what's wonderful: the research, and there's tons of data on this, really shows that all you have to do is simple, consistent routines. There can be notable differences from just doing simple, consistent routines. So keep it small. When we're working with our clients and we're finishing up sessions, and it's like, okay, what are a couple of actions you're going to take? We really encourage them, 1 or 2 things. Keep it small, keep it simple, keep it something you can experiment and learn from. So get outside for even 5 or 10 minutes and do nothing. Just be outside there. One of the things I love, it's been really important in my life, and I see it being really helpful to my clients, is a very simple gratitude journal. Just once a day, write down 3 things, and write down 3 things. You can do it in your phone, 3 things you're grateful for. There's, again, really good data that shows how that actually over time really changes our brains. It changes how we perceive the world as we're building that reservoir of gratitude. Practice box breathing. And then finally, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break, both emotionally, from a self-compassion standpoint. Give yourself grace, and also give yourself just mini moments in the day, and put them on your calendar. Use that tool to help reinforce your priorities.
I love that. You can go on to the next slide, run through these quickly to get you guys out of here on time. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but all of us carry around these antiquated definitions of success, right? And oftentimes they were handed to us from other people. And so sometimes my clients have a hard time defining success for themselves. But what they know is when they made equity partner, they didn't feel like they'd made it. They thought there was going to be this like, aha, and now I've made it. And they get there and they're like, I don't feel like I made it. And it's because they were getting there based on someone else's definition of success. And it did not make them intrinsically feel successful, right? So some of the definitions of success that my clients have adapted once getting to equity partner are paying off their parents' mortgage. That was something that felt really meaningful to them and that was a goal that was worth sacrificing for, right? It allowed them to really feel good about themselves. It was very meaningful and it was aligned with the person that they wanted to be and the legacy they wanted to leave. Another was serving as state bar president. One of my clients, they made equity partner. That didn't feel particularly successful to them, but being state bar president and being in that role of service for a larger organization felt very meaningful. And for another client, it was spending July in Nantucket. That made them feel like they had arrived, right? They could take a month off, and I put off in air quotes because, they were still working, but they were working a much reduced schedule, and they were able to rent a house in Nantucket and spend the entire month there. And that really felt like they'd made it. And of course, I can go on and on. I've coached many, many, many clients about what those personal definitions of success are, but oftentimes it isn't what we thought it was going to be. And that's what I want you to know. Most of the time, people are just chasing the next gold star, is what I call it, right? So they make equity partner, then they want to be the practice group leader, then they want to be on the executive committee, or they want to go in-house and they want to be a VP and they want to be the general counsel, right? But they don't know why. And they cannot articulate what about it is that they are after.
Yeah, if I could just interject,
course.
This happens all the time where in working with clients, I'll ask them, well, what is your personal vision for your life? What do you really want? And it almost invariably, I can't think of a client that had a real good clarity of that. A lot of times they're like, good question. I have never really thought about that. And instead they're chasing, as Sarah-Nell was pointing out.
Yeah, you can go to the next slide. And so this is how do you define success? And that's me out there on the ski slopes, because one of my personal definitions of success is skiing at 70. So I want to be mentally sharp enough. I want to be alive. I want to be physically fit enough that I can ski at 70. And that's what motivates me to get to the gym most days. But if you don't define success for yourself, you will end up like me, which is waking up one day in someone else's dream. I had a great life, right? A great family, a great career. I was a partner up for equity at an AmLaw 100 firm. And I realized through that process of going up for equity that I didn't want it, that my whole body was saying, no, thank you. Right. And so I redefined success for myself. And so what success means for me now is meaningful work, continuous learning, exploration and adventure. I take about 6 to 12 trips a year, right? Joyful movement, connecting with people I love, and longevity. And I make less money. That's just the fact of it. And I have more space for the things that bring me joy. You can go to the next slide. And your definition of success might look totally different. And that's the whole point, right? And so this is a reflection question for the end. What makes a life rich and multidimensional? And what are the qualities of a life worthy of your time, energy, and talent? And we are right at 2 o'clock. So unfortunately, we did not have time for questions today. But
one quick thing. I think if you go on to the next slide, there are resources, there are things to go to. There's one resource that's not on here that Sarah-Nell and I just thought about yesterday that's also really interesting, and we can probably provide it, Suzanne, to you, but I'll just mention it here. It's a great podcast. One of Brene Brown's podcasts, I forget which one, but it's where she works with
Lisa Leahy. It's her
Lisa
podcast with
Leahy.
Lisa Leahy on immunity to change. And there are two parts, part 1 and part 2. And it's the Dare to Lead podcast. It's on Spotify. It's also on her website.
And then on the next slide is just some more information about each of us as well and how to contact us.
Yeah, and I was going to encourage you guys, if you have questions, connect with us on LinkedIn, right? Shoot us a message. Ask your questions. I would love to hear from you. So please, please, please don't think that the conversation has to end here. We would love to talk to you. We would love to get to know you. We would love to answer your questions and be in further conversation with you. We're both very approachable and very easy to find and reach. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks
Karen,
so
any
much,
final
everyone.
words?
Just ditto, ditto, ditto on everything Sarah-Nell just said. And again, thank you so much for your time, and please do reach out.
Alrighty, this concludes today's presentation. Thank you so much, Sarah-Nell and Karen, for your time and your expertise on burnout. And thank you so much to our members for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody.